آتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا ابا الحسن یا امیر المومنین یا علی بن ابی طالب یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا فاطمۃ الزہرا یا بنت محمد یا قرۃ العین الرسول یا سیدتنا و مولاتنا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفعی لنا عند اللہ یا ابا محمد یا حسن بن علی ایہا المجتبی یا ابن رسول اللہ یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا ابا عبداللہ یا حسین بن علی ایہا الشہید یا ابن رسول اللہ یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا ابا الحسن یا علی بن حسین یا زین العابدین یا ابن رسول اللہ یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا ابا جعفر یا محمد بن علی ایہا الباقر یا ابن رسول اللہ یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا ابا عبداللہ یا جعفر بن محمد ایہا الصادق یا ابن رسول اللہ یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا ابا الحسن یا موسیٰ بن جعفر ایہا الکاظم یا ابن رسول اللہ یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا ابا الحسن یا علی بن موسیٰ ایہا الرضا یا ابن رسول اللہ یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا ابا جعفر یا محمد بن علی ایہا التقی الجواد یا ابن رسول اللہ یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناک بین یدی حاجاتنا یا وجیہان عند اللہ اشفع لنا عند اللہ یا ابا الحسن یا علی بن محمد ایہا الہادی النقی یا ابن رسول اللہ یا حجت اللہ علی خلقہ یا سیدنا و مولانا انا توجہنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بک الی اللہ وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا ولي الوصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا ساداتي يا موالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله وتشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله فتنقذوني من ذنوب عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا ساداتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد
پڑھنے والے صرف ایک ہی صاحب ہے ایک دو سننے والے دو پڑھنے والے تین سننے والے بھائی صاحب کوئی نماز بھول جائے گا نہیں ایک سے اگر میں زور سے بولوں گا وہ نماز بھول جائے گا
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For those that are standing in the lobby right now, please kindly make your way into the prayer hall as we will be starting our short jashan for the Wiladat of Bibi Fatima al-Zahra. Salamu alayha. Once again, jo Hazrat is waqt lobby mein hain, برائے کرم پلیز مسجد میں تشریف لے آئیں تاکہ ہم محفل میلاد کا آغاز کر سکیں. بہت بہت شکریہ. بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. بار دیگر نعرے صلوات. بر حبیب خدا ختم الانبیاء امام زمانہ بلند تر صلوات. جزاک اللہ. اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As you know, tonight, in addition to the Du'a Tawassul program, we are also commemorating, or rather celebrating, I should say, celebrating this auspicious night of the Wiladat of the daughter of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, Bibi Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah alayha, Allahumma salli ala. And on this auspicious day, I bid you all salutations and felicitations. And we ask subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our ibadah here this evening, this small little ibadah. As you also know that this Friday at 7 p.m. we will also be having the grand jashan of Bibi Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah alayha, here at Masjid-e-Ali. And so please do attend for that as well. Ek salawat padi ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As you also know, tonight we will start with the Urdu part of the program, which will consist of the Mankabat Khwan who are here with us this evening, who will recite in honor of Bibi Fatima al-Zahra. That part will be in Urdu, then followed by the lecture tonight by Sheikh Bilal Hussain. So with that, I ask you all, ek salawat padhiye ala Muhammad wa ale Muhammad. حضرات, میں جانتا ہوں کہ زیادہ لوگ اس وقت یہاں نہیں ہیں, لیکن اگر برائے کرم ایک تھوڑا سا آگے آ جائیے گا اور آتے آتے ایک اور صلوات پڑھیے علی محمد و آل محمد. بہت بہت شکریہ, بہت بہت شکریہ. تھینک یو ویری مچ, تھینک یو ویری مچ. ایک اور صلوات علی محمد و آل محمد. سب سے پہلے میں دعوت دیتا ہوں جناب طہا علی صاحب سے کہ وہ آئیں اور بیوی کی بارگاہ میں اپنا ہدیہ پیش کریں. بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
صلوات. ہے یہی سب سے برا تیرا قصیدہ زہرا. ہے یہی سب سے برا تیرا قصیدہ زہرا. ہے یہی سب سے برا تیرا قصیدہ باپ کہتا ہے تجھے ابیہا زہرا، ہے یہی سب سے بڑا تیرا قصیدہ زہرا، باپ کہتا ہے تجھے ابیہا زہرا، اور تیرے بچوں کی فرشتوں نے غلامی کی ہے، تیرے بچوں کی فرشتوں نے غلامی کی ہے، تیرے سسرال میں اترا ہے ستارہ، تیرے سسرال میں اترا ہے ستارہ زہرا، اور کل ایمان پری ہے تیرے آنچل پہ نماز، کل ایمان پری ہے تیرے آنچل پہ نماز، کیوں نہ پھر تجھے کو کہے کعبے کا کعبہ زہرا، کیوں نہ پھر تجھے کو کہے کعبے کا کعبہ زہرا، اور آج ہم نے یہاں نایاب قصیدہ پڑھ کر، آج ہم نے یہاں نایاب قصیدہ پڑھ کر دیا سارے رسولوں کو اکٹھا زہرا، کر دیا سارے رسولوں کو اکٹھا زہرا، ہے یہی سب سے بڑا تیرا قصیدہ زہرا، باپ کہتا ہے تجھے ابیہا زہرا، صلوات
جزاک اللہ. یہ تھے جناب طہا علی صاحب جنہوں نے اپنے خوبصورت انداز میں بی بی کی بارگاہ میں اپنا کلام پیش کیا. ایک اور صلوات پڑھیے اعلی محمد و آل محمد. 4 مصرے ہیں، ملاحظہ فرمائیے کہ مخلوق کے سلطان کی تسکین ہے زہرا، مخلوق کے سلطان کی تسکین ہے زہرا، اور یاسین بھی کہتی ہے کہ یاسین ہے زہرا. اور اسلام نے زہرا کی فضیلت میں کہا ہے، اسلام نے زہرا کی فضیلت میں کہا ہے، میں دین محمد ہوں میرا دین ہے زہرا. اسی کے ساتھ اب میں دعوت دیتا ہوں جناب میر متقی صاحب سے کہ وہ آئیں اور بی بی کی بارگاہ میں اپنا کلام پیش کریں. بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. اور جو حضرات ذرا تھوڑے سے پیچھے ہیں تھوڑا سا اگر آگے آ جائیے گا. میں جانتا ہوں کہ پلیز ایک ذرا اف یو ڈونٹ مائنڈ ایک اور آتے ہوئے صلوات علی محمد و آل محمد.
صلوات. مریم کہاں اور کہاں فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ. مریم کہاں اور کہاں فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ. امید ارض و سما فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ. مولود کعبہ کیے ہم سفر، جو گھر علی کا وہ زہرا کا گھر، زوجہ کا سب سے زیادہ ہے حق، دنیا میں شوہر کی جاگیر پر، دنیا میں شوہر کی جاگیر پر. کعبے کی مالک مکان فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ. اے عرش اور فرش والوں سنو، مت بولنا اس کی تقسیم کو. اے عرش اور فرش والوں سنو، مت بھولنا اس کی تقسیم کو. ہے سورہ مائدہ کی قسم، دونوں جہاں کا گزارا نہ ہو، دونوں جہاں کا گزارا نہ ہو. گر روک دے روٹیاں فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ. مریم کہاں اور کہاں فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ. سچوں کو لے کر چلے جب نبی، اکلوتی بیٹی کی کیا شان تھی. نجران کی سمت جاتے ہوئے، آگے محمد تے پیچھے علی، آگے محمد تھے پیچھے علی، چلتی رہی درمیان فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ۔ رکھتا ہے جو آپ سے دشمنی، لعنت سے بچ نہ سکے گا کبھی۔ باغ فدق حق ہے بس آپ کا، جو یہ نہ مانے تو اس پر ابھی، جو یہ نہ مانے تو اس پر ابھی گر جائے یہ آسماں فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ۔ ہم ہیں عزادار ابن علی، ہیں سیدہ ہم دعا آپ کی، ہم ہیں عزادار ابن علی، ہیں سیدہ ہم دعا آپ کی۔ جشن کے دوران یہ آپ سے کہتے ہیں شبیر کے ماتمی، کہتے ہیں شبیر کے ماتمی، مقبول ہوئے دعا فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ۔ مریم کہاں اور کہاں فاطمہ، 11 اماموں کی ماں فاطمہ۔ صلوات۔
جزاک اللہ۔ یہ تھے جناب میر متقی صاحب جنہوں نے اپنے خوبصورت انداز میں اپنا کلام پیش کیا تھا۔ اگر اجازت ہو تو چند مشرے بی بی فاطمہ کی شان میں ہیں۔ ایک صلوات پڑھی علی محمد و آل محمد۔ عرض ہے کہ زہرا کا در ہے باب شفاعت در نجات، زہرا کا در ہے باب شفاعت در نجات، اور زہرا خدا کا نور ہیں یکتا ہے ان کی ذات، اور بالا بشر کی فکر سے ہیں آپ کے صفات، اور لیکن پے ثنا یہی ممکن ہے ایک بات، اور جب بھی کبھی بطول کی عصمت رقم کروں، جب بھی کبھی بطول کی عصمت رقم کروں، پہلے قلم پہ سورہ کوثر کو دم کروں۔ اسی کے ساتھ اب میں درخواست گزار ہوں جناب حسن جعفری صاحب سے کہ وہ آئیں اور بی بی کی بارگاہ میں اپنا کلام پیش کریں۔ بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔
تمام مومنین مومنات کو بی بی فاطمہ زہرا کی ولادت بہت بہت مبارک، اور ایک مرتبہ درود بھیج دیے بی بی کے اوپر ماشاءاللہ۔ بی بی کی منقبت سے چند اشعار آپ لوگوں کی سماعتوں کی نظر، ایک مرتبہ اور درود بھیج دیے محمد۔ جس طرح اللہ کو واجب ہے سجدہ صبح و شام، جس طرح اللہ کو واجب ہے سجدہ صبح و شام، ویسے ہی کرتا ہوں میں تسبیح زہرا صبح و شام، جس طرح اللہ کو اور پی رہا ہوں مہر زہرا کا میں پانی رات دن پی رہا ہوں مہر زہرا کا میں پانی رات دن اور کھاتا ہوں در زہرا کا صدقہ صبح و شام جس طرح اللہ کو اور یہ بھی زہرا کی دعاؤں کا اثر ہے مومنوں یہ بھی زہرا کی دعاؤں کا اثر ہے مومنوں اور اچھا لگتا ہے عزا خانوں میں آنا صبح و شام جس طرح اللہ کو اور میں جو رہتا ہوں تصور میں سرے کرب و بلا میں جو رہتا ہوں تصور میں سرے کرب و بلا اور یوں کیا کرتا ہوں جنت کا نظارہ صبح و شام جس طرح اللہ کو اور میرے مسلک میں تولا کی طرح جائز ہے یہ میرے مسلک میں تولا کی طرح جائز ہے یہ اس لیے کرتا ہوں ظالم پر تبرہ صبح و شام اس لیے کرتا ہوں ظالم پر تبرہ صبح و شام جس طرح اللہ کو اور اس لیے گھر پر لگایا ہے علم عباس کا اس لیے گھر پر لگایا ہے علم عباس کا اور سامنے آنکھوں کے لہرائے پھریرا صبح و شام جس طرح اللہ کو اور جب سے سرور کا عزا خانہ سجایا مومنوں جس طرح جب سے سرور کا عزا خانہ سجایا مومنوں اور گھر میں رہتا ہے مودت کا اجالا صبح و شام گھر میں رہتا ہے مودت کا اجالا صبح و شام جس طرح اللہ کو اور آخری شعر ہے اور میں جو کرتا ہوں تلاوت آیت تطہیر کی میں جو کرتا ہوں تلاوت آیت تطہیر کی اور اس طرح پڑھتا ہوں زہرا کا قصیدہ صبح و شام میں جو کرتا ہوں تلاوت آیت تطہیر کی اس طرح پڑھتا ہوں زہرا کا قصیدہ صبح و شام جس طرح اللہ کو واجب ہے سجدہ صبح و شام اور ویسے ہی کرتا ہوں میں تسبیح زہرا صبح و شام جس طرح اللہ کو
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. جزاک اللہ. یہ تھے ہمارے جناب حسن جعفری صاحب جنہوں نے اپنے خوبصورت انداز میں اپنا کلام پیش کیا بی بی کی بارگاہ میں. دعا کرتے ہیں ہمارے حسن بھائی، میر بھائی اور ہمارے طاہا بھائی، اللہ تعالیٰ آپ کی اس عبادت کو قبول فرمائے اور جو سننے والے ہیں ہماری بھی اب سب کی عبادت کو قبول فرمائے. اس سے پہلے کہ میں شیخ بلال حسین کو میں دعوت دوں to come up tonight for the lecture on this auspicious event, let us recognize the sponsors for tonight. And the sponsor for tonight's Mahfil Milad is the Jashan is sponsored by Mrs. Ifat Jafri for her marhumeen, for your marhumeen, and for those that have no one to recite for them Surah Fatiha. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase the blessings of sister and to increase the rankings of her marhumeen in the afterlife. Ek salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And with that, my brothers and sisters, I would like to invite Sheikh Bilal Hussain up to the minbar to address tonight's auspicious occasion. Please welcome him with a very warm salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بارے دیگر نعرے صلوات بر حبیب خدا ختم الانبیاء امام زمانہ بلند تر صلوات.
Inshallah, before we begin, there's a request for Amma Yujib for Farida Bano bint Sayyid Akbar Ali Shah and all of those in our communities, our families who are suffering through sickness and disease. Amma Yujib 5 times. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mudtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، إنا أعطيناك الكوثر. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And your loudest salawat is congratulations to the master of our time, Sahibul Asr wa Zaman. أسعد الله أيامنا وأيامكم بذكر ولادة سيدة النساء العالمين فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. May Allah make these days blessed for us upon the celebration of that lady who was known as Khair al-Kathir for our Prophet. Our Prophet, Allah describes and He says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. I did not send you except for mercy for all of humanity. When Allah wants to give our Prophet something, He gives him Sayyidah Zahra. The discussion about this is within the Quran itself. In various parts of the Quran, Allah offers support and consolation to our Prophet based upon the difficulties that our Prophet goes through. One of the places of this is, for example, in Surah al-Zahra and Surah al-Inshirah. These two surahs that are paired together, it's actually, if you recite Duha in your salat, according to some maraja, it's mandatory you have to recite Inshirah, but it's recommended according to Sayyid Sistani that if you recite Duha, you recite Inshirah with it. Both of these surahs, if you take a look at the structure of the conversation, Allah is consoling the Prophet based on the difficulties that he goes through. And Allah in Surah al-Zahra makes a statement, وَلَا سَوْفَ يُعْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. Soon your Lord shall give you and you will be well pleased with what your Lord has given you. When Mufassirin discuss this verse in Surah al-Zahra and they discuss the conversation about soon your Lord will give you that which will please you, the conversation comes that what is Allah offering our Prophet that will please him and make him happy? Some Mufassirin say this is the discussion of, for example, the authority over Jannah, and that heaven is what will be given to our Prophet, and that our Prophet will be pleased by this. What we say is that if Allah has made the promise in this world, then the fulfillment of the promise has to be in this world. That Allah is not simply going to offer our Prophet an answer, a solution of the hereafter and make him a promise now. Because Allah promises that to all of the mu'mineen. This is a promise that is specific to our Prophet. Other Mufassirin have come and said that this promise, وَلَا سَوْفَ يُعْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى, that soon your Lord will give you and you will be pleased, refers to the idea of the establishment of the government of Islam. That through the entire period of 13 years in the city of Mecca, when our Prophet was abused, mistreated, treated with difficulties, that Allah was making a commitment to him that soon you will be happy with what I provide you, and that the government of Islam is what would make them happy and make our Prophet happy. However, we still doubt this interpretation. Why? Because our Prophet was not someone who was interested in material power. As a matter of fact, at one point in time in the city of Medina, Jibreel comes to visit our Holy Prophet and he says, Ya Rasulullah, Allah has commanded me that if you, O Prophet of Allah, allow me, I am to make the entire city of Medina out of gold for you, and it is entirely yours. And all of this wealth would not decrease in iota of your status on the Day of Judgment. Ya Rasulullah, do you permit me? And the Rasulullah says, Oh Jibreel, I only want enough from my Lord that I have enough food for one meal, and that for the next meal I have to beg Allah again to provide for my sustenance. So, oh Jibreel, I don't want from this gold, I don't want from this dunya. So now to imagine, وَلَا سَوْفَ يُعْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى, that soon your Lord will give you and you'll be happy and satisfied, that the idea that this would be a material item that is provided to our Prophet and our Prophet would be radhi by this and pleased by this makes no sense. Which is why the third interpretation, which is answered within the Quran itself, is that Allah saying, soon I will give you and you will be happy, is answered in Surah Al-Kawthar when Allah says, Inna a'ataynaka al-Kawthar. That certainly we have now given to you Kawthar. Kawthar is the abbreviated way of saying Khair al-Kathir, a great goodness. This great goodness is another place where Mufassirin may debate and say, what is the great goodness that has been given to our Prophet? Some again will come and say, this great goodness is that pond of Kawthar, Hawd-e Kawthar, that on the day of judgment will be the place where water will be available on the day of judgment. And they say that this is a great goodness given to our Prophet. Why? Because when we read the description of the day of judgment, we see that the day of judgment is a day of heat and oppression. And in the state of heat and oppression, the heat and oppression of the day of judgment, Allah Himself describes and says, it will be a day in which even my Anbiya will ask for my relief from the severity of the trials on the day of judgment. The description comes, it will be as if the sun was to be sitting on top of the head of those present in the field of Mahshar. And the only sort of coolness and comfort that Allah has promised for certain is this pond of Kawthar that will be the property of our Prophet Rasulullah. And he explains and he says, one who drinks from the pond of Kawthar will never be thirsty again. Imagine now, Akhirah, eternity, where there is no end, and one sip of one pond, and you will never be thirsty again. And the possessor of that pond is none other than Rahmatul lil Alameen Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But again, we go back to the fundamental that if Allah has made a promise in this world, its fulfillment has to be in this world. Which is why when we look at this surah of Kawthar, we see that Allah is talking about and answering something within the surah. This, the shortest surah of the Quran, 3 verses. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna a'ataynaka al-Kawthar. Fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Inna sha'aniyaka huwa al-abtar. That certainly it is your enemy who is the one who is abtar. Look at the context. Abtar in the Arabic language literally refers to an animal whose tail has been cut off. This Surah Kawthar is another one of the surahs that was revealed as a consolation to our Holy Prophet, and the narration of history explains to us that in an instance one of the Jahiliyyah, one of the ignorant people of the Quraysh was speaking to our Prophet in the province of the Kaaba, and when he finished, someone asked him, what were you speaking to this abtar for? The idea of referring to Rasulullah as abtar, one who has no tail, no lineage, was one of the recourses of the polytheists of the time. When they came to the conclusion that there is no solution for us to answer the words of this man who calls himself a prophet, they said, then khair inshallah. Not that they literally said that, but they said, well, we're done with him. When he dies, there is no one to continue his message. And they said it in such a way that with him dies his lineage, which was something disrespectful in the culture that relied on lineage, and disrespectful in the essence of saying that his message will die with him. In response to this, Allah reveals Surah Kawthar and says, Inna a'tayna, certainly we have given you Kawthar. Fasalli li rabbika wanhar. Then praise and worship your Lord and sacrifice in His way. Inna sha'niyaka, certainly your enemies, wal abtar, they will be the ones who have no lineage. In this we understand that the context of Kawthar that Allah is discussing has to, one, be khair al-kathir in this world, and two, it has to be the process by which the lineage of the Prophet would continue, such that his lineage continues, and those enemies who spoke against him, they would become the ones who are abtar and without lineage. In understanding this, now we see that today is a day of celebration for us. Today is a moment of great appreciation, that our Prophet was given consolation by Allah that, O Prophet, your lineage is not the one that will discontinue. Your lineage is not the one that will end. You will not be the one who has no continuation, but instead the Kawthar and Khair al-Kathir that Allah will bless him with will keep his family and his lineage alive until the day of judgment. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For that Prophet who is Rahmatul lil Alameen, mercy to all of humanity and mankind, For him to possess khayr al-kathir, the sifat, the characteristics of that khayr al-kathir have to be unparalleled. There can be no equivalency between that which Allah gives him and tells him that you will be satisfied by what I give you, and that which anyone else possesses. Which is why when we want to understand and have ma'rifah of Sayyidah Fatima, it's impossible to have that ma'rifah, because as we can't understand how great the mercy of Rasulullah is, we can't understand the greatness of what was good that was given to him. Why? If we take a look very briefly at three aspects of the life of Sayyidah Zahra, we find within it both lessons for us and how we shall live, and two, ma'rifah of how her status and understanding and position was unlike anything else that can't be duplicated. The goal being that if we are to talk about this lady, if we are to celebrate this lady, one, implements from her in our lives, and two, recognize that there is nothing like her, that there is no equivalency to anyone that can exist, and this lady. So with that, we'll mention 3 points from her life. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. The first, in looking at her relationship with her father, there is no child and no person in the life of our Prophet who has been given the same attribute and description as has Sayyidah Fatima. When Rasulullah says she is Umme Abiha, that she is the mother of her father, there is no one else, no matter how great the khair they have done in the life of Rasulullah, who could receive such a title that she is as if the mother of her father. Sayyidah Khadija, as great as she was, as an amazing a support for the religion of Islam. Remember, the wives of the Prophet afterwards would complain that why does Rasulullah remember Khadija when he has so many of us present? And Rasulullah would say, there was no one like Khadija. But even in that case, she doesn't attain the status that Sayyidah Fatima. The relationship between a father and daughter is well elaborated, and there are lessons within this relationship between father and daughter for us to establish in our household. From the one aspect, we take a look and we see that Rasulullah in his relationship with Sayyidah Fatima does not give her what we think is appropriate of referring to our daughters as our princess. Why? A princess, when we think of our daughters as our princesses, what do? We keep them in lofty towers and away from the realities of the world. Rasulullah does not do this with his daughter. Rather, Rasulullah keeps his daughter involved in every affair of his nabuwwat and every difficulty that he goes through. Which is why when our Prophet says, the last person I see when I leave the city and the first person that I see when I return is Fatima. When the Prophet makes this statement, understand something. Our Prophet went to over 70 campaigns that were fought in the history of Islam. And our Prophet would go on these campaigns. When he left to fight, Fatima is the last one that he saw. When he returned, whether injured or healthy, the first one that he saw was Sayyidah Fatima. The explanation and structure shows that in our daughters, in raising them, don't keep them separated from society. Don't keep them away from understanding what the reality of the world is. Rather, train them to be a member of society by your own actions. Keep them involved in the processes that you go through in life, so that tomorrow when they enter into the world, it is not a rude awakening for them. It is not something they have never been prepared for, that they have no idea how the world operates, but rather you have prepared what's called in Arabic a shakhsiyya fa'ila, a capable individual who when they enter into society, they've been trained through the difficulties of life to enter into and to be supportive to their spouse, to be supportive to their community, to be a good mother and trained to know how it is to help their children. When we look from another aspect though, don't imagine that our Prophet showing us this about Sayyidah Fatima makes her the same as every daughter. Rather, take a look and see when our Prophet gives the explanation and he shows that when Fatima would enter the room, our Prophet would stand up and jalasaha fi majalisihi, and seat her in his seat. This is one of the unique attributes, that to have ma'rifah, that rahmatul lil alameen, the mercy to all of humanity, would get up from his seat and sit Fatima in that seat and in that location. Showed the uniqueness of her status. Now understand something. How do we know that this is unique about her? Because if it hadn't been, this sunnah would have been the practice in our communities, that every father when your daughter enters, you get up from your place and sit your daughter in your place. The fact that this wasn't done and isn't a part of our culture is a demonstration of showing that Rasulullah doing this with Sayyidah Fatima was a demonstration that Sayyidah Fatima is unlike anyone else, and that her status is unlike anyone else. When, for example, one of the wives complained and she said, Ya Rasulullah, that this Fatima is no longer a fatat, when they saw Rasulullah stand up in the honor of Sayyidah Fatima, one of the wives complained, Ya Rasulullah, she is no longer a fatat, meaning she's no longer a little girl, she's a grown woman married. Yet still you consider this as a responsibility that when you see Fatima, you get up from your place. Is it not inappropriate that you, who are the leader of the Muslim Ummah, stand up from your seat and location? And for a woman who is married, you give her your seat and position. Rasulullah explains to teach the ma'rifah of Fatima. He says, I explain to you that Fatima is like no one else. When I miss the smell of heaven, I smell the neck of Fatima. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In this aspect, we see one of the explanations of both a lesson that we apply in our life and the uniqueness and the ma'rifah that we have of who is Sayyidah Fatima. When we look at her role as a wife, in this too we see both lessons that apply to us and lessons that are unique to her. When we look and we see, there is a very interesting narration about the understanding of what is marriage and how to appropriately treat a marriage and relationship. When Islam wanted to establish examples for humanity to follow, Allah gave us the Ahlul Bayt. إِنِّي تَارَكُمْ فِيكُمْ ثَقْلَيْنِ كِتَابُ اللَّهِ وَإِتْرَةِ أَهْلِ بَيْتِ. The explanation of this is that the book on the one side gives us the principle that needs to be applied, and the Ahlul Bayt give us the example of how to apply it. In the process of teaching the healthy relationship of marriage, the example of the marriage between Bibi Fatima and Imam Ali is one of the items that is put forward for us to understand what it means to have a healthy relationship. What is a healthy marriage? In this aspect, one of the difficulties that we still face today is how do we balance between the responsibility to our children and the responsibility to our spouse, which takes prevalence, which takes priority. And this issue of how to handle this is one of the most difficult processes that till today couples still struggle upon, that what is my priority in my relationship? In one of the instances, we see how the fundamental of answering this question is laid out in the relationship of Imam Ali and Bibi Fatima. It's explained that one day Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam returns to the house from some work. When he enters the house, he says, "Oh Fatima, is there any food in the house? I have hunger." Sayyidah al-Zahra replies to him, she says, "Oh Ali, there has not been food in this house for 3 days, but I did not wish to trouble you. Oh Ali, I swear to you, had there been even some food that was left for Hassan and Hussain, I would prefer to feed it to you over feeding it to the children." There are two discussions here that happen from this one hadith and this one example and explanation. The first of these that we'll mention is the idea of the relationship between husband and wife. That while Islam has mandated that the responsibility is upon the husband to provide for all of the needs and resources for his spouse, the idea of providing housing, the idea of providing food, the idea of providing security, the idea of providing respect and dignity is all wajib upon the man to provide for his wife. The recommendation that Sayyidah Fatima is showing that even when a necessity may not be readily available, try not to trouble your spouse by that difficulty. And even though it's his job and responsibility, be careful not to put too much of a burden on your spouse and try your best to accommodate and understand that a husband who goes through difficulties, when we want to support him, it's maybe by foregoing our right at times. The second point, which is very interesting, is the statement that Sayyidah Zahra makes in this narration of saying, had there been food in this house, I would have preferred to give it to you over giving it to Hassan and Hussain. This is a very important lesson about the validity and structure of marital relationships. Many times, a relationship between husband and wife is given, God forbid, no slip of the tongue there. That was Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad. The relationship between a husband and wife, be very clear, I made no mistake there, wife, I didn't say anything else, is something that holds value until children come into the picture. And then what happens is the children become the qibla, and the relationship between husband and wife begins to deteriorate. And what happens? The husband and wife talk less to each other, talk more about the children, and the focus of both of these individuals become these children. And what happens as these children grow up, the husband and wife come to the realization, we have nothing in common. We don't like each other. We don't talk to each other. Over the past 20 years of raising these children, I have become someone else, and my spouse has become someone different. And we find in this culture, in this society where we live now, that divorce is no longer a matter of two people not getting along, that divorce comes even 20, 30, 40 years after a marriage has taken place, when they say, now the children are grown, what's the point of having this relationship? The consequence, why? Because their qibla shifted to the children, and the children became the top priority in the relationship. The balance of how Allah wants us to see these relationships is to look at our children as our fruit. Even in the Quran it says this, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَجُوءٍ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَأَنفُسِ وَثَمَرَاتٍ. In the famous verse of Surah Al-Baqarah where Allah says, we will test you with fear and loss of wealth and hunger and loss from yourselves and thamarat, your fruit. The explanation of Allah saying that loss of your fruit is not that we will take your banana away from you. Not that no watermelon for you. No, the thamarat Allah is mentioning is your children and your offspring are your thamara. When we look and we see that children are the thamara and the fruit of our relationship, if you want to have healthy and good fruit, you don't focus on the fruit, you focus on the tree. The tree that produces that fruit is that marriage and that relationship. If we want to raise good children, if we want to raise healthy children, we have to preserve and take care of the marriage first. And when the marriage is healthy, then the children will come out good and healthy. The mistake that happens in society is once we see the fruit, we say, I want to have great fruit. The fruit is my priority. I need to make sure that this fruit of mine that I have produced is excellent. And we neglect the tree. We neglect the relationship that gave us this fruit. And as a consequence of me focusing on this fruit, but not the tree, the fruit eventually comes out spoiled and rotten. It can't be healthy. The lesson that Sayyidah Fatima is teaching for society in this process is the aspect of showing that the priority that we need to keep amongst ourselves is that keep a healthy relationship, take care of your partner, and your children themselves will be taken care of after. We preserve the tree, and the fruit remains healthy. This important lesson is one that's still very practical till today, that when we talk about what's a healthy relationship, whether for ourselves, our next generation, look to the example of Ahlul Bayt, and you will understand how to structure your priority. But the aspect in which that she is unique, and an aspect in which that she is someone who is unlike anyone else, is the aspect of who is considered her quf. One of the aspects in finding a spouse for marriage is to look for someone who is your equal, not in wealth, not in education, not necessarily in even the worldly material matter, but in spirituality and faith. That when I look for a spouse for my child, one of the things that I want to pay attention to is what is their equivalent in someone who will respect and train and assist and work with them in spirituality. Which is why what's said about Sayyidah Fatima that can be said about no one else. لولا علي ما كان لفاطمة قفا من الآدم إلى يوم القيامة. That had it not been for Ali ibn Abi Talib, there would have been no one to be her equal in the process of spirituality or to be her equal from the creation of Adam until the day of judgment. And that was something that was unique about Sayyidah Fatima, that while we can look for someone who is their equivalent, we can find someone. But had it not been for Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, no one would have been worthy of her from the creation of Adam until the day of judgment. In this aspect, we saw her unique as well too. The third area where we take a look at the life and the lessons of Sayyidah Fatima are that role as a mother. That we're introducing these aspects of talking about the greatness of her teaching and her process of education as a mother and her role as a mother. One of the most important points to note, and as we mentioned this example, it will come to light, is that one of the fears that we have for our daughters and for our women is that they should not be defined by their relationship to their spouses or their children. One of the fears contemporarily happens is the fear that my personality will be lost in my relationships and I shall have no personality. When we look at the example of Sayyidah Fatima, this is not the case. And one of the important ways that we know that this is not the case is that in our celebrations today, we're celebrating Sayyidah Fatima because of who she was, not because of necessarily who her husband was or who her sons were. This aspect of preserving an identity is demonstrated in the character of Bibi Fatima. That though she was someone who was perfect as a spouse and perfect as a mother, she was perfect individually and invested effort in herself as well too. How? There's a very famous hadith from our second Imam, Imam Hassan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, where he explains and he says that I would hear my mother worshipping in the night, yet I never heard my mother make dua for herself. So I asked my mother one night, and I said, لِمَا لَا تَدْعِي لِنَفْسِكِ? Why don't you pray for yourself, O mother? And she replies, Ya bunayya Hasan, Ajjar thumma ad-dar. You pray for others before you pray for yourself. In this aspect, we saw her teaching the aspect of spirituality to Imam Hassan, her child. Look at the details of this story. Then Imam Hassan says that when I would awake at night, and at night when I would hear my mother worshipping Allah. Not that I saw my mother on Instagram or TikTok, or that I saw her watching TV, but rather that the child says when I would notice my mother, her priority in her free time was her relationship with Allah. The uniqueness of that relationship with Allah that Sayyidah Fatima possessed is where Imam Hassan continues and he says, when I would describe my mother worshipping at night, I would see her begin the night standing in her mihrab doing ibadah. When I would awake from my sleep, I would find that her feet had swollen from continuing to stand in ibadah all night. It says, مَا رَأَيْتُ أَحَدًا أَعْبُدَ اللَّهُ أَكْثَرَ مِنْ أُمِّ فَاطِمَةَ. I never saw anyone who worshipped Allah as much as my mother, Fatima. In this we see, and this is an important element, when we want to teach our children spirituality, you want to teach your children to pray, you want your children to look to Allah for answering their problems, the way that you will teach them to look to Allah is not by telling them, but by showing them. When we reflect and demonstrate our ibadah and we perform our ibadah, that's how our children learn that in difficulty, in goodness, in every time, that it is to Allah that I need to turn to find the solution to my problem. Telling them is not sufficient. It's through the demonstration and character. And that by them seeing us doing this worship, they will be influenced by this aspect. Teach by doing, not by commanding. This also continues in the idea of taking a look and see that when Sayyidah Fatima wants to spend her night in worship, it's not in a place where there are no children. One of the things that we do is when we're serious about our ibadah, we want to have privacy and quiet away from everyone. We want to close and lock the door so the children can't disturb us. And how will they know that this is something important to do? The aspect is that they should be able to see us, be involved with us. Yes, it's a difficulty at times. Yes, it's a distraction at times. But as part of my ibadah with Allah is teaching the next generation, then they need to be involved in my ibadah. When we see this ibadah, then we learn to do this ibadah. If we don't see it, it doesn't become part of our character. The idea of selflessness and giving is taught through the idea that when I have freedom and it's simply mine, no one knows that Sayyidah Zahra is busy in ibadah all night. The only one who can see it is her child. This is where selflessness is taught. That she teaches and she says, even though it's entirely mine, only mine, I choose to rather give it away. She doesn't need to tell anyone that she's giving it. She doesn't need to show anyone that she's giving it. But in her children, they learn the aspect of selflessness. How? By looking at their mother in this process of ibadat. When we look and we see from this aspect, we understand in the role of mother and relationship with children, not just for our mothers. This lesson is for us as fathers as well too. All three of these aspects, whether we take a look at the relationship with our parents, the relationship with our spouse, the relationship with our children, are lessons that are not unique to women, but are universal to society and humanity, which is why we say, whether you want to know how to treat your parents, look at the aspect of how Sayyidah Fatima is treated by her father and how she treats him. If you want to see the relationship with the spouse and understand the relationship, whether it's your husband or your wife, look to the way that Sayyidah Fatima gives us the treatment and understanding of preferring the relationship over the children. Whether it's the aspect of teaching, it's not simply the mother who can pray at night in worship, or the mother who includes her children in the worship, but rather the father as well too can build this relationship with his child. All of these are aspects of showing that her personality was not restricted to say that she is only recognizable as the role of a mother, a wife, or a daughter, but rather that in her is a message for all of humanity and a teaching for all of humanity. Which is one of the reasons why we see the statement of our Imam alayhi salam, نَحْنُ حُجَّةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ وَفَاطِمَةُ حُجَّةٌ عَلَيْنَا. That if we are the authority of Allah on this earth, then the authority over us imams is our mother Fatima al-Zahra salamullahi alayha. In this we see the greatness of her example as being a teacher in all aspects of her life, and her example is both a lesson for us and a uniqueness that is only special to her that no one can replicate and no one can follow. Whether it is the fact that there is no one who is her equivalent, or no one else that the father stands up for when she enters, or no one else that the imam says that she is the authority over us as we are the authority over humanity. To understand this, we see that her creation is also something that is nothing like anyone else in this world. Our Prophet would explain, and when he says that, oh, when I want to smell the scent and the fragrance of heaven, I smell the neck of Fatima, is an explanation to say that Fatima was like no other human being that lived on this earth. When we understand the process of her birth, there is something that is uniquely agreed upon amongst all of the historians, is that she was born from the fruit of heaven. In some of the narrations it says that when our Prophet went to Mi'raj, Allah presented him with an apple. When he ate from that apple, from that was the birth of Sayyidah Fatima. In other narrations is after the waqiyah of Mi'raj, when our Prophet returns to this earth, Allah instructs our Prophet to fast for a period of 40 days. And at the end of those 40 fasts, Allah sends a plate of food from heaven. In it are the fruits of heaven, and it's given instruction that open your fast with this fruit. And from that fruit is the birth of Sayyidah Fatima. There is no one who can disagree that the conclusion is this, that Sayyidah Fatima is not like the Aimma that in their ziyarat we recite and we say, أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها. No one can make this statement about Sayyidah Fatima, that I swear that you are from the pure backbones and pure wombs, and that ignorance never touched you through the lineage of Adam until they came to this earth. Rather, for Sayyidah Fatima, all that can be said was that she was the preserved knowledge with Allah until the time of her revelation on this earth came to us. Unlike anyone else. Which brings us to the final fada'il that we'll mention, if you guys are still okay. Everybody's okay? One more. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. There's an event in Hadith Kisa. In Hadith Kisa, it's mentioned that when Allah introduces Ahl al-Kisa, and He says, I did not create these five except, I did not create the universe, I did not create the heavens, the earth, the sky, except out of love for these five. The Malaika ask the question, وَمَنْ تَحْتَ الْكِسَى? Who is under this cloak? And Allah replies, under this cloak are hum Fatima, wa abuha, wa ba'luha, wa banuha. Allah. That under this cloak are Fatima, her father, her husband, and her children. There are 2 points here. In the Arabic grammatical language, there is single, there is dual, and there is plural. How many people were under the cloak? 5. How many sons of Sayyidah Fatima were under the cloak? No. Allah doesn't make mistakes. Meaning, grammatically speaking, instead of saying banuha, which is a plural, the correct use was banaha. But Allah uses the plural. That under this cloak are Fatima, her father, her husband, and her son. Plural. Meaning that from the moment of Ahl al-Kisa, the indication of the A'imma is present there, that all of the A'imma are those who are considered Ahl al-Kisa. Otherwise, Allah should have grammatically used the dual context, because Arabic possesses an indication of singular, dual, and plural. The second point, why does Allah use the reference Hum Fatima wa abuha wa ba'luha wa banuha? Why is the introduction made from Sayyidah Fatima? Wouldn't it be more appropriate that Rahmatul lil Alameen, the greatest of the Anbiya, is the introduction? Wouldn't it make sense maybe to say that the father of all of the A'immah, Ali ibn Abi Talib, is used as a reference? But Allah chooses Sayyidah Fatima as the point of origination and showing and demonstrating to the Malaika and the people of heaven who are under the Kisa. One explanation, and this is something that is discussed and debated amongst the ulama, and there are many answers to this question. One answer specifies and says that Fatima was the joiner of the nur of Nabuwat and Imam. That from Adam until Abdul Muttalib, the nur of Imamat and Nabuwat was joined until in the sons of Abdul Muttalib, Nabuwat was given to Rasulullah and Imamat was given to the father of Imam Ali, Abu Talib. The connecting of that nur once again was done through the personality of Sayyidah Fatima, that she was the piece of Rasulullah who married Imamat, and from her came the rest of the A'immah alayhimus salam. That to show that through her is the connection of these two anwar was one of the aspects. Another explanation comes and says to us this, or another opinion says to us is this, that being who remained in the heavens worshipping Allah with the malaika was the most familiar to the malaika. And that the nur of Fatima remained in the heavens after the nur of Nabuwat and Imamat was revealed, was the reason why Fatima was most familiar to all of the beings of heaven. Which is why when Allah wants to introduce Ahl al-Kisa to the people of the heavens, He introduces to the angels and the people of heaven through Fatima, because they know Fatima from worshipping with her much longer than anyone else. In this way, the uniqueness of why she is so unique and special is one of the aspects of understanding and showing. The third opinion about this explains and says that she holds a unique status with Allah that is unlike anything else. Why? When we look at the example of Rasulullah, we see everything that is tied to Nabuwat and the Anbiya. And whatever we see from the Prophet, we say, Hada min al-Anbiya, that this is the status of the Anbiya that he performs this action. When we see the status of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Hada min al-A'imma, and everything that he performs is associated with the A'imma. But Sayyidah Fatima is neither a Nabi nor an Imam. Therefore, Allah ties her example to Himself. And when He introduces to the Malaika who it is that is present under this blanket, He introduces them by the one who is most associated with His example and not the example of the Anbiya or the A'imma. To understand this, there is one hadith that I will leave you with. يَرِضَ اللَّهُ بِرِضَاهَا وَيَغْضَبَ اللَّهُ بِغَضَبِهَا. Allah says, the Prophet says with regards to Sayyidah Fatima, that Fatima is that one, that Allah is pleased when Fatima is pleased. And Allah is angered when Fatima is angered. So when you want to see what Allah desires in this world, our Prophet himself is teaching you, look to my daughter Fatima and you will see the pleasure and the anger of Allah where you can see it nowhere else. ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. We call out to Allah 10 times, Ya Allah, 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 Ya Allah. Ya Allah, بحق فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها وسر المستودع فيها. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadah from us. Ya Allah, by the right of Sayyidah Fatima, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. O Allah, by the right of Sayyidah Fatima, connect us to the religion of her father and to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. O Allah, by the right of Sayyidah Fatima, protect us from the fire of hell. O Allah, by the right of Sayyidah Fatima, connect us to her sons and to the A'immah and khususan the Imam of our time, Sahib al-Zaman. O Allah, keep our children on the upright path of Islam. Ya Allah, we have gathered here with hajat by the right of the mention of Ali Muhammad, by the right of the mention of Sayyidatun Nisa ila Alameen, fulfill our hajat. Ya Allah, those amongst our families, our communities that are suffering through sickness and disease, khususan Farida Bano binti Sayyid Akbar Ali Shah, and all those in our families, our communities who are suffering through sickness, Ya Allah, give shafa'at to the mu'mineen wherever they are. Ya Allah, those mu'mineen who are suffering through strife and difficulty around the world, Ya Allah, give aman to the mu'mineen wherever they are. O Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our families from the upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman, and entitle us to the ziyarat of Imam Hussain in this world and the shafa'ah of Imam al-Hussain in the hereafter. 1 Surah Fatiha, 3 times Surah Ikhlas, khususan for today's sponsors, Marhumeen, Mrs. Iffat Hussain Jafari, our Marhumeen, and all those who are in need of dua. 1 Surah Fatiha, 3 times Surah Ikhlas, with your loudest of salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Bismillah. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله وخاتم النبيين، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا أبا محمد حسن بن علي المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين الشهيد بكربلاء، السلام عليكم تسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد بن علي الجواد، وعلي بن محمد الهادي، والحسن بن علي الأسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب العصر والزمان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أعوانك والأنصارك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك حجة ابن حسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتع